Hey guys, I'm Pixel Dan, and this is a review of the Voltron Legendary Defender Shiro, Keith, and Lance pilot action figures from Playmates Toys. That's right, my friends. I've already really loved the Voltron figures that Playmates has been coming out with. And while the big robots are awesome and definitely the star of any Voltron toy line, I was really excited when they announced that they were also going to be producing action figures of the pilots from the series. And these three right here were the first ones to begin hitting stores. These actually started showing up around Christmas time, although in pretty limited quantities. They've actually only shown up a little bit and they're a little hard to find still, so I think maybe a full release is coming very soon. But since I was able to score myself these three, let's go ahead and check them out. As you can see, the figures do come in that same style Voltron blister card packaging we've seen for all of the smaller scale Voltron figures. It features the three figures within their own blister cards there, and when you flip it around to the back side, you're treated to an image of the characters from the animated series, as well as a little bio about the character, and down below that we've got some cross-sell art that shows some of the other figures coming out, including Hunk and Pidge. So we've got these guys outside of the packaging. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at them. Let's start by bringing in the tape measure so we can get a scale here, where you can see that these guys are actually just under 5 inches tall. They're probably around 4 3/4 in height, so just under 5 inches there. A little bit taller than most of the Voltron figures we've had in the past, because those are usually around that 3 3/4 to 4 inch scale. In fact, the old Panache Place ones were even smaller than that. We'll see that a little bit later on with comparison time, but for now, let's go ahead and look at these guys one by one. I am actually going to start things off by taking a look at Lance. So all of the figures are built pretty much exactly the same. And one of the things I want to talk about first and foremost, and the reason I chose Lance, is the paint deco. Unfortunately, while these guys look pretty good at a distance, they have a decent sculpt on all of them. In fact, the prototypes looked fantastic back at Toy Fair. I gotta say that these final products could definitely use some work, especially in the paint department. Looking at Lance's face there, you can really see it. I do unfortunately have a big chip on his nose on this one. That's just an unfortunate paint smear on mine, but you can see that the paint itself is just a little bit sloppy around the eyes. And the sculpted details are so soft that he almost doesn't even look like he has a mouth. It's either the sculpted details are so soft or the flesh tone paint is so thick, it basically just covers the mouth, which is really unfortunate. But that unfortunately continues all the way down the figure. Look how sloppy the silver paint is on the belt. I mean, it is just slapped all over the place, totally not within the lines on this figure. And it's just like that kind of all over, and that is really unfortunate. And it's something that you're gonna see across the board on all of these figures. The paint deco could definitely be a lot cleaner on these guys. So that is pretty unfortunate because it definitely hurts the look of the overall sculpts. So down below that, the figures do have their very cool looking new Voltron uniforms, the Paladin uniforms, as seen in the Netflix series. And I do really like the look of the sculpts. I think the sculpts are pretty great. You can see the colors are nice and bright. They stand out really good on there. And the figures do still feel nice and solid. So good looking figures overall. I just wish that the painted details were a little bit better because that definitely is going to hurt the overall look here. So the articulation on these guys also functions pretty much exactly the same. Let's go ahead and just show you with Lance here before we take a look at the rest of the figures. The heads are on a ball joint, so they do have the ability to go left and right as well as slightly move up and down there. We've got those ball-like hinge joints at the shoulders, so the arms can go outwards about this far. The sculpt of the shoulders do stop the movement right about there. They can move forwards and backwards. We do have swivels at the elbow as well as a bend at the elbow, and we can swivel at the wrist there, so that is pretty nice. There is nothing in the waist, unfortunately, so this is all a solid sculpt here. We do have the hinge-like joints at the thighs, so you can see the legs can come forwards. They can also move side to side. There's some more paint sloppy right there. You can see some white paint. That's because the black is just painted over like white plastic, and it's definitely very crooked. Anyway, back to the articulation. So that's what we got on the legs. You can swivel at the knees. You can bend at the knees, which is really nice, but then we have nothing in the ankles, so the feet do not move. So it's almost really good articulation, but they're missing some key articulation points, specifically in those ankles and at the waist. Without being able to turn the waist or pose the ankles, honestly, it kind of renders almost all of the rest of the leg articulation kind of useless, because since the feet are in one position, there's really only one way you can stand them. Now, you can still kind of mess around a little bit and still get flat-footed poses, but being able to pose the feet a little bit would definitely help with that, and not being able to turn the torso also is going to hinder some of the poses you can get out of these guys. Now, one cool thing with these guys is they all come with removable helmets, which is awesome. I love a Voltron figure with a removable helmet because that's how the vintage ones always were when I was a kid. And this is pretty cool because I do have the clear blue like blast shields on the helmets there. Again, paint could be a lot cleaner, but they just squeeze right over the sculpts of the heads. They do look a little bulky as a result, but I will say that the figures look a lot better with the helmets on because it kind of hides the bad paint on the head sculpts there. So each of the figures do come with their own unique accessories. They all come with a cool translucent blue shield, which is very cool, and they can just hold on to that in either one of their hands. And then Lance here actually gets a cool little blaster. So the blaster is actually pretty neat because he can do some two-handed poses with this, which is pretty cool. The fact that his wrist can swivel are definitely helpful for that. It's not perfect, but you know, you can still pull it off. At least you can get the two-handed poses out of this guy. So that's going to complete our look at Lance. Let's go ahead and move on and take a look at Keith. So the Keith figure is pretty identical to what we just saw with Lance. In fact, it looks like the sculpts of the body is the same. It doesn't appear to be any different other than the paint deco that is seen on there. So all that articulation is still the same. However, we do have the same kind of sloppiness with the paint. For some reason, we've got some like pinkish color right there on his wrists where it almost looks like the red kind of bleeded into the white plastic there. And then all of the black is just really, really out of the lines. And again, if you look at the head sculpt there, he's got his hair kind of hanging down in front of his eyes, but yeah, it just definitely could have been painted a lot better. So I have the same complaints with Keith as I did with Lance, and it really all comes down to the paint deco. Again, he does have a removable helmet, which is pretty cool. You can fit that right over his hair there. He does have kind of like bulkier hair, so it does bulk out just a little bit more than Lance's, but you still can put that on there. And then he does have his shield, just like we saw with Lance. And the other thing that Keith comes with is this cool little sword blade. Now, the sword itself is actually made of a pretty gummy plastic, so you can see it's really pliable. It's probably going to come out of the package a little warped, so you're going to have to straighten it out there, but he can hold on to that in either of his hands, so that way you can kind of pose him holding onto that sword. Now, the way that his wrist is sculpted, actually, because of this little bit of armor right here on the wrist, you'll notice that even though I can swivel the hand, it's always kind of sculpted a little bit downwards, and because he doesn't have like the hinges that allow you to move the wrists forward and backwards, it almost looks like he's always holding the sword kind of inwards, and you can't really get him to hold it straight outwards. So that's just another place where I wish that we had an extra piece of articulation just to make this accessory work a little bit better. So that brings us over to Shiro. Now, Shiro is a little bit bigger than the other two, so he does have a different body sculpt. He's built a little bit bigger. He does have a better paint deco on his face. I will say I actually like the sculpt of his face a lot better than the others. He's even got the little scar across his nose. He's got the little tuft of gray hair there in the front. But you can see there's still a lot of the same kind of paint details going on where it's real sloppy on there. So really, overall, these guys just need cleaner paint decos, and that would make them miles better than they are. But otherwise, his articulation functions the same, and pretty much everything about this guy is very similar to what we saw with the others. He does have the same removable helmet, and again, that really does help his look. I love the helmet there. But one thing that Shiro's got that's different is instead of having a weapon like the sword or the blaster, you actually have an interchangeable hand, and it actually pops off on the right there, kind of above the wrist. You can see it's just on a peg, and instead we can swap that on for his cool little glowing hand, of course, to recreate the scenes in the show where he's kind of got like that little power glowing hand there. The only thing I don't really like about this is it's kind of just molded in white, and then they painted the fist pink. If this was translucent pink or translucent red, that would have looked so much better. It really would have made it look like it's glowing or powerful. As it is, this is a little boring. I mean, we've got the option to change it, and that's cool. I just think it could have been a lot better if it was done with translucent plastic. Aside from that, he does also have the same shield as the others to kind of complete that look there. Alright guys, it's comparison time. Just for fun, let's line these guys up with some of the other Voltron figures from over the years. Let's go and start with Shiro. I've got him alongside Sven from the most recent Mattel toy line. This is actually the only other time we've had a figure of Shiro or Sven, here in the US at least. So it's kind of fun looking at these two side by side. And then let's go ahead and take a look at Keith standing alongside several of his other counterparts, including the vintage Panache Place version, the most recent Mattel version, and yes, those two wearing black are Keith in the Third Dimension series, which is what those two figures are from Trendmasters. He actually wore black to match the lion that he piloted. And let's go ahead and do comparison time for Lance. Same thing here, standing alongside the vintage figure from Panache Place, standing alongside the more recent Mattel release, and like with Keith, those red ones back there are indeed Lance, because in the Third Dimension series, he wore red to match the lion that he piloted. So it's kind of fun looking at all these guys side by side, just seeing the way all the figures differentiate from each other and how they've changed over the years. And really, if you want to line these guys up with the lions, it is worth noting that the lions are very undersized to how they should be, but it's kind of cool putting them with the different lions. Of course, these are a little outdated now because even the packaging shows them with the wrong lions because of the way the series has progressed. So, you know, it's totally up to you. If you want to put Lance with the blue lion, you can, or you can put him with the red lion, which is what he has now, and same for Keith. Put Keith with the red lion if you want to, or put him with the black lion. So there you guys go. There is a look at the 3 currently released Voltron Legendary Defender pilots of Shiro, Keith, and Lance. Like I said, these are a bit hard to find. I was lucky enough to get a hold of them before Christmas, but I don't think they've really been hitting in force yet. So I'm hoping that these are going to come out a little bit more very soon, and hopefully they'll be also released with Pidge and Hunk there, so we can complete at least these 5. We definitely need an Allura at some point. I really hope we get a Princess Allura. But I'm also hoping that when they get a full wide release, maybe the paint deco is corrected on those. Maybe that's one of the reasons these are so hard to find, is because they're going to update it. Because, man, the paint needs some serious work to make these guys better figures. So anyway, good luck, guys. Happy hunting. Hopefully you can track these down, and hopefully they'll be hitting retail stores a little bit wider very soon. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button, leave me a comment, let me know what you think, and don't forget to subscribe for more reviews just like this one. Until next time, my friends.